we're going to start with an RBT level question and then we'll just alternate. All right, guys, let's get started. So this is our first question. This is an RBT level question. So when we're talking about an RBT level question, what we really want to do is highlight whether or not that BCBA is practicing inside of their scope. So if you are an RBT and you're here, think about your scope of practice. That's very important. I'm going to go through and periodically highlight some information that seems pretty important for this question, just to model for you guys what that looks like. And I typically give people about a minute, minute and a half before I tell them what the answer is. So let's see what's important here. RBT. Okay. I'm going to highlight this. RBT often pauses 4 to 6 seconds. That seems important. During the delay, the learner sometimes touches a different card, looks towards the door, makes unrelated vocalizations. The learner begins to respond less consistently. Okay, I'm going to highlight that. And starts watching the RBT's hands instead of the array. What is the best action for the RBT to take to improve instructional control? So this is an RBT question. And even if you're not, you're at BCBA, you still can practice, what will be the best action for the RBT to take? Pay attention to those details. So I highlighted some key information for you guys that might signal the correct answer. So pretty much what they're saying is they're doing some DTT. They're asking, the SD is touch spoon. The learner is usually correct, but the RBT is pausing 4 to 6 seconds before delivering reinforcement. Now, it's really important that reinforcement is delivered immediately, right? That's one of the really important things, is that it follows that action that you're attempting to reinforce. That is a really important piece there. So what they're saying is over several sessions, the learner responds less consistently and is watching the RBT's hand. So they're kind of looking for prompts elsewhere. What is the best action for the RBT to take during the next session? So we are an RBT, not a BCBA. Our options are increase prompting, deliver reinforcement immediately after the correct response, remove reinforcement for prompted trials only, or add more pictures, distractor pictures to make the discrimination longer. Now, because we are an RBT, we want to follow the plan as it's currently written. They've already told us the details of there is a delay between reinforcement and touching the spoon. They're doing DTT. So we're not going to increase prompting. We're not going to remove reinforcement. We're not going to add distractor pictures. And even if you're a RBT to be and you're not sure, the fact that these things are saying, like these action words, without the BCBA, like the BCBA said to do this, you really want to continue with the plan as written because you are an RBT. So you don't want to be making any changes without talking to your supervisor, right? That is important. All right, this is what you guys are here for. Most of you guys, not everybody, but a lot of you guys. This is a BCABA level question. Thanks for the work y'all do. Oh. I remember you as Mr. Texas. My son has made strides, and I have no doubt it's because of the work y'all do. Aw. And you as well, working in special education. Yes, Mr. Texas. Now, one of the things that I will be highlighting quite a bit tonight is looking for our keywords and using our strategy. So, when you have these big scenario-based questions, part of what they're doing is adding in a lot of details. Sometimes details that literally don't matter. They are distractors, really. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lexington, for the heart. I appreciate it. So one of the things I would recommend is to highlight those details after you read the question. So I'm going to read this along with you guys and highlight some things that I think is important. And if you have the answer, put it in the chat. But this is our BCABA level question. Okay, it's dropped. Okay, accuracy has dropped. Despite higher prompt levels and continued access to reinforcement. Okay. The RBT regularly delays reinforcement. By several seconds. Okay, maybe that's why it's doing that. Okay, there we go. Just trying to make it as big as I can for you guys. BCBA notes, learner has started orienting towards the therapist's hand movements rather than the stimuli on the table. So this is kind of like a replica of the first question, right? What behavioral process most likely explains why stimulus control is weakening? I meant to put this in orange. It kind of matches here. Orange. So these are some details that I'm highlighting here that might be important. Okay, so this is kind of like a continuation of the RBT question, but what is the behavioral process that explains why the stimuli do not have, or that why stimulus control is weakening? There's higher prompt levels, there's continued access to reinforcement, but they've noticed that the RBT is delaying the reinforcement by several seconds. So what is that behavioral process? What is being described here essentially? So our first option is A, the SD has become an S delta because reinforcement is unavailable. B, reinforcement delay is weakening the SD response relation and increasing accidental reinforcement of competing behavior. C, the reinforcer has lost value due to satiation. D, prompt fading was introduced too quickly. Now, this is definitely a question where you can look at these details and match the answer choices in the question. Where do they say anything about satiation? Like, what evidence do we have to support anything related to satiation of the reinforcer? Like, it literally doesn't say that anywhere. There's nothing to indicate that, right? So we would take that one right on off. Like, take it out. Okay. Prompt fading was introduced too quickly. Someone might see a lot of prompting words and be confused and want to keep it. So, okay, let's keep it for now. The SD has become an S delta because reinforcement is unavailable. Now, this is going to highlight a little bit of fluency, right? Like if you don't know what an S delta is, or you don't feel that you're confident with what an SD is, this question might be a little bit more challenging, right? But still, if we look back at the details, they're saying despite higher prompt levels, so we actually could take D off, because if they're saying that higher prompt levels have been continued, that would not indicate prompt fading at all. So you could take that one off too. So what you have left is A or B. I say B, reinforcement is still available. Very good. That's another detail that you can match. And sometimes I feel that the answer choices can match almost as if it's matched to sample. You know, sometimes you kind of look back and see, did the details in the question match the details that are being provided in the answer choices, really? So they did not say anything about reinforcement no longer being available. So even if you didn't know what S delta was, you could still cross this one out. Reinforcement is available. It doesn't say anything about it being unavailable. It says it's delayed, right? So if you got stuck on this question, you're like, wait, I don't even know this symbol. You still could use the information in this answer choice to be like, but wait, reinforcement is still available. It's still available. It's just delayed. So correct. The answer is B. And look, I know that this process of going through the questions in such a involved way at first takes time. Like, it's time consuming, but the more you practice, the better you get. And then you feel much more confident with being able to go through the questions really, really quickly. All right, now we've got an RBT question up next. Let's give it a shot. So we have an RBT running a table-based writing task with a learner who has a treatment plan that includes prompting functional communication prior to escalation. When a worksheet is placed on the table, the learner pushes the pencil away, drops his head, and begins to whine softly. In previous sessions, these behaviors have often been followed by louder protest, task refusal, and attempts to leave the chair when support is delayed. The behavior plan states that staff should prompt a taught replacement response before the problem behavior escalates and should reinforce appropriate communication consistently. What should the RBT do first? That's a lot of information going on, right? That's a lot of details. So I would say start with looking at the details looking at the sentences more closely and seeing which details are important. Okay, I know this is an RBT question. Excuse me. So an RBT is following the treatment plan, okay? Has a treatment plan that includes prompting functional communication. Okay, great. There is a task given, and we see this chain of behaviors. Okay. previous sessions, these early behaviors have been followed by louder protest, refusal, attempts to leave the area. The behavior plan states, now this is pretty important for an RBT question because you are practicing within your scope, right? Yes, you can submit your answers in the chat. Yeah. Yep. The behavior plan states, that's important for an RBT because we're following a plan as an RBT, states that staff should prompt a taught replacement response. Okay. So for the RBT exam, I would say reviewing what's in your scope is really important. To me, the details here kind of give the answer away. They're saying what the behavior plan states. So if they're saying, what should the RBT do first? It's kind of coming together, you know? Okay, you said B. Repeat the instruction more firmly so expectations stay clear. No. I mean, the instructions are pretty clear. It's just they might not want to do them, or it might be too hard, or they're tired, you know? Wait silently until the learner complies or escalates further. Now, a lot of people do see, but that doesn't teach the individual what to do instead. So we're going to take this one off. Remove the task immediately and end the work demand. What does the behavior plan state? Should prompt a taught response. So for the RBT questions, I'm not saying that they're necessarily easy, but I think as you learn to pay attention to scope of practice, it becomes a lot easier. A lot easier. Okay. Now, instead of me skipping towards this BCBA, BCABA question, do you guys want to try experimental design? A graph. You guys want to see a graph? I think we should look at one. Let's see. Okay. And I can get some feedback from you guys. All right, let me see if I can shrink this a little. And shrink myself. Okay. In terms, I put in the chat, how confident are you feeling about the exam right now? 1 to 5. 1 being not confident, 5 being very confident. Okay, 3.5. That's not bad. Maybe we can get it to a 4 by the end of the live. Okay, now what's going to be hard about these is because these graphs are big. It's kind of hard to show everything. So I'm going to show you the graph. I'm going to scroll down to the question, scroll back up a little bit. It's hard on this medium. But we have a graph here. Now, when I was recently doing some studying or tutoring rather, we were practicing a lot of visual analysis for experimental design. That's section D on the BCBA or BCABA task list. I think it's a really good idea for you to get more comfortable with just starting here and reading the graph this way, understanding what the independent and dependent variables are, looking at what different conditions we have. This is an A-B design. It's missing the phase change line, but this is an A-B design. So really teaching yourself to look at it. Looking at the data path in the baseline condition, looking at the data path in the intervention condition. That's really important to just start there. Because I feel like sometimes people just see a graph on the exam and they're like, I can't. And that's not true. You can. You just have to learn how to read it, okay? So this is our A-B design graph. Now, while I'm stuck on this for a second, I just want to highlight something. The A-B design is the weakest of all the single subject designs. Okay, this is an RBT level question. So as I've said many times tonight, if you are an RBT, you want to pay attention to scope of practice. So if you're seeing I don't want to give away the answer, but if you're seeing action words that are essentially pointing to you being outside of your scope, that's a bit of a yellow flag, you know. Continue, stop, analyze, other action words that I can't think of, but okay. Let's look at this one. A learner is on a DRA procedure for calling out during group instruction. The learner is earning reinforcement for raising a hand and waiting to be called on, and the plan states, I'm gonna highlight this because I need my RBTs to latch onto that. The plan states that problem behavior maintained by teacher attention should not contact attention. After a few days, calling out decreases, but the learner begins tapping loudly on the desk and humming while looking directly at the teacher during waiting periods. The teacher has started giving reminders, eye contact, and brief comments in response to the tapping. What should the RBT do at the moment if following the plan correctly? So following that plan as an RBT is pretty important. Okay, so this kind of happens, the instances of one behavior decreases, another might increase. The teacher's giving reminders, eye contact, brief comments. What should the RBT do? A, provide immediate attention for desk tapping because the learner's trying to communicate. B, continue reinforcing hand raising and avoid giving attention to the desk tapping and humming. C, stop the DRA procedure because a new behavior has appeared. D, deliver a verbal warning each time tapping occurs. Okay, someone said section I was very, what should you do? Common sense type questions on the exam. Okay. And some people, I can be hard. So if you have advice for anyone in the chat of I know we can't discuss exact questions, but if you have a general way that you kind of read the questions, when I think of section I think about the objectives being clear, that there's modeling, that there's feedback. So when people talk about behavior skills training, sometimes that comes up. What should the RBT do at the moment if following the plan correctly? All right, well, as I said, you guys, I would take off C. Why are we stopping it? Did the BCBA say to do that? And look, on these exams, we're thinking ideal conditions, that's what also makes it difficult. Like I said before, sometimes we're leaning so much into, well, I would, or I've seen this be done like this. And it's is that the best practice, so to speak? Stopping the DRA, why? Take that off. Deliver a verbal warning each time the tapping occurs. What did the plan say? Whether or not I agree with that. So if that's the case and that's the plan, why would we deliver a verbal warning? So that's out. So we have A and B left. What should the RBT do if following the plan correctly? Well, This is why the details are very important, because I've highlighted some details that are the exact opposite of the answer choice, and that is our indicator that it can go. Provide immediate attention for desk staffing. What does the plan say? The plan states that problem behavior is maintained by teacher attention and should not contact attention. So if A is provide immediate attention, you're like, wait, I can take it off. So we only have one answer left. It's got to be B. This is why breaking these questions down is important, because sometimes after you do that, the correct answer is like right there. It's like, oh, it is right there. Okay, this is a BCBA, BCA, BA level question, and then maybe we can try like another experimental design question, and then that'll be it. Number 6. You know what? I'm gonna skip this one. Let's do this one. Okay. 8, a learner has made good progress with functional communication training for escape, maintain, aggression. During moderate demands, the learner reliably hands over a break card and receives a brief break, and aggression has decreased significantly. However, when tasks become harder or longer, aggression rises again. Break requests drop, and the staff report that the learner often rips or crumbles the card instead of using it correctly. The BCBA wants to improve the treatment plan so the replacement behavior remains usable under stronger establishing operations. Which adjustment is best? Okay, so this is a good question for you, Nair, because they're saying, well, what would be the next best step, essentially? And I believe you said this was the type of question that you find challenging. Our answer choices are, oh, wait, let me go through the details. Okay. We're doing functional communication training. I'm going to highlight that. We've said it's escape, maintain. Okay. Moderate demands, hands over a break card. And gets a break. Aggression has decreased. Okay, great. When the tasks become longer or harder, aggression rises again. Okay. So as soon as there is more response effort, let's say, the aggression rises and the break requests drop. And we're seeing increase in aggression, and the topography might be changing a little bit of the aggression. BCBA wants to improve the treatment plan so the replacement behavior remains usable. So that's really important. We want the replacement behavior, which is the break card, to remain usable, even if there are tasks that require more response effort. So what adjustment is best? Okay. All right. A, delay reinforcement for break requests and to build tolerance under harder conditions. Strengthen the replacement response under higher EO conditions by adjusting task difficulty. C, remove break access during difficult tasks so problem behavior no longer contacts escape. Increase extinction only and keep all other variables the same. Now they said they want the replacement behavior to remain usable. That is a very important sentence. So as you guys are looking, if you want to put your answer in the chat, you can, but that's a pretty good indicator of some answers that we could eliminate. Because if there are answer choices that essentially make it to where the replacement behavior isn't usable or isn't even included, you might remove it, right? Because it's like that goes against what they're saying. I'm gonna have to edit this a little. Delay reinforcement for break requests. So if I just focus on they want to improve the treatment plan so the replacement behavior of requesting breaks remains usable, I would take A off. That doesn't match. So the replacement behavior remains usable. So if I want the replacement behavior of breaks to remain usable, why would I delay reinforcement for break requests? That doesn't make sense. It goes away. Strengthen. I like that word, strengthen. Strengthen the replacement response under high EO conditions by adjusting task difficulty and reinforcing breaks immediately and consistently. Now, okay, I don't want to say that right now. C, remove break access during difficult tasks so problem behavior no longer contacts escape. What did we say? Does that have the replacement behavior remaining usable? It does not. It goes. Okay. Increase extinction only and keep all other variables the same. Now, someone, I don't know, I try to get in the brain of people who might say like, oh, well, maybe it's D. Now, I'm looking at the details. I'm looking for the evidence, but someone might say increase extinction. But my question would be, and maybe this is getting too much into semantics, but increase extinction to me would be indicating that extinction has already taken place because we're increasing it, right? Maybe I'm overthinking it, but increase extinction. Where do we say we're doing that? It doesn't. And also, so the replacement behavior remains usable. So even if you were stuck and it's like, what's the best answer choice here? The fact that this has strengthened the replacement response, that kind of matches, right? Match. You see? So PP. So I'm going to ask you guys again in the chat if you're still here. I'm going to give a little question. How much does looking for details help? 1, not useful. 5, extremely useful. I don't know. So drop me a number. Help you understand the question. So let me know, a little rating scale, a little bit of data. Because some people don't like this method. They're like, it's too much for me. And I get it. Everything's not for everybody. But I find that once you learn how to break down the questions, you start to be able to do this a lot faster. Like it just becomes easier. And for a lot of people I work with, something clicks where they're like, oh, I see it, right? I can see the match. Like I'm matching to sample. Having those details, having those keywords, having those different things really helps. But some people don't like that. But I think for me as a neurodivergent person, like when I think back to how I prepared for this exam, this is kind of how I was doing it. I was breaking it down for myself because I mean, I have ADHD and sometimes I literally think I have like dyslexia or something. Like I really do. So sometimes just the words, seeing them all on the page, like that's just overwhelming for me. Like it's too much. So I have to break it down for myself. So for my brain, a strategy like this is helpful. And as I said, the more you practice, the more you replicate this strategy across different kinds of mocks, you'll kind of see whether or not this works for you. But I think for a lot of people I've worked with, it helps them pay attention more to the information that matters and they're not getting tripped up over the details that don't, because that's kind of the nature of testing questions in general, right? They almost want you to decipher or be able to label or tag the important information, right? And if that's something that you have a hard time doing, it makes it harder, Hi. I need to follow back up with you. We had a meeting. I know you said that you forgot about it. I keep meaning to like send you a message to reschedule. Let me write that on my to-do list. So we can get that meeting rescheduled. But I don't know. What do you guys think? So how much does looking for details help you understand the question? 1, not useful. 5, extremely useful. Let me know. 4, okay. Yeah. And I would say, look, I'm still working on it. Where is it? Experimental design. It's multiple steps, right? So I'm like, okay, I help people look at the different designs, decide what's going on, not even decipher, read what's happening on the graph, then scrolling down and looking at the actual question. So it's kind of a multi-step process that I'm thinking of for experimental design. But one of the things I might recommend to you guys is when you're looking in Cooper, you're looking at different research articles, take some time to just make a note of what you see. As I said earlier, what is the independent and dependent variable? What kind of graph is it? What elements of baseline logic can I see? How would I describe the data paths? That's a great place to start. That's a really, really good place to start for experimental design. You can hand draw them. That would be my preference. I got to do my little plug for my resources. The experimental design workbook is coming. I've got some people who've been really nice enough to help me with that, to help me get that done faster. But I do have some of the resources I talked about tonight in my Stan store. As always, I have my decision-making framework. This expanded version of what we reviewed tonight in terms of how do you use a process or a plan to answer these questions rather than panicking. And not only do you get the application guide, but you get the full hour video that kind of breaks down different questions for you and really gives you an idea of how to replicate this. That's why this isn't a mock. This is a decision framework guide, because then you can use it with any mock that you have, any mock that you find online, and kind of see if this process is working for you? Does it generalize? Are you able to find the details and get the evidence and really learn how to break apart this question and make not a guess, but to make a choice based in evidence, okay? Then I also have my keyword guide, which is $4.99, super cheap. You know, what a steal. And it goes through and it talks a little bit about how to find these different details. And if you are stuck between the last two answer choices, this can be a great resource to start with. And it's affordable. I try to make these things affordable for you guys because I know there are study resources out there that are quite pricey. So it's meant to also help you when you're stuck between the last two answer choices. So you get a lot of tips. And this is made for RBTs, BCBAs, and BCABAs. So the RBT section is in one part. The BCBA, BCABA section is in a second part. So the total pages is probably about 30 for $4.98, like less than $5, you know? It's pretty good. A look at my YouTube if you've missed any study lives in the past. And I hope that it's useful to you guys. So I am going to go, but it was a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for sharing the live, engaging, all the things. I really appreciate all of you. And if you're going to come back next Tuesday, I will see you here at 6 p.m. All right. Good night, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.